Hello, my name is Katie Stairs, and I'm honored to be here as an impact speaker for Greater Twin Cities United Way today. I also volunteer as a data quality custodian for another local nonprofit, where I ensure the accuracy of data that drives change. In any other spare moments, you'll find me with my nose in a book, or two, or three. But before all of that, I am a partner and a mother. I'm grateful you're here. This opportunity means more to me than just telling my story. It's about encouraging others, maybe even you, to join me in using our voices and our experiences to create a better world by sharing mine freely in my voice first. No more fear, no more hiding. I hope to shine a light on the realities of homelessness today. If you're a parent out there struggling as I have, I want you to know that I'm rooting for you. This isn't about reciting my past. It's about connecting with all of you in a shared pursuit to uplift our community. Let me take us back to 6 years ago, when my family and I were living on the edge. My fiancé and I were doing everything we could to make ends meet, but poverty has a way of tightening its grip no matter how hard you fight. My fiancé worked full-time and tirelessly, but all the jobs I could find would only pay enough for someone else to raise my child. And after living through multiple horrifying daycare providers, I decided to try to be a homemaker instead. I couldn't put my son through experiences like that just to work, only to pay to put him in those experiences in the first place anymore. It was madness. But even with my fiancé working all the overtime he could get, my homemade cheap meals, donating our plasma for a check as often as we could, and doing our jobs for others, none of it was enough. 1 month we couldn't cover the bills, and just like that, we lost our apartment. Our new home became my fiancé's car in the middle of winter in Minnesota. The bitter cold of those nights will stay with me forever, an aching reminder of where my family and I have been, and a constant fear in the pit of my stomach that we could end up back there again. This wasn't my first brush with homelessness. I've been unhoused before, but nothing prepares you for the emotional toll it takes on you as a parent. The fear, the shame, the constant crushing feelings of failure. It was overwhelming. I remember feeling worthless, like a terrible mother and partner. I cycled through thoughts of blame and shame, struggling to stay strong for my fiancé, my son, and for myself. Every day was a battle. The initial challenges were food, sleep, and child entertainment. My son was 10 at the time and full of energy, a light in the darkness of our days. For food, we relied on local food kitchens that supply hot meals to the homeless every day. We'd wake up early and hit the Dorothy Day line for breakfast, try to pick up enough prepackaged snacks for lunch, and then find wherever Loaves and Fishes was serving dinner, if they were that night anywhere nearby. Being detached from preparing meals hurt more than I had expected, especially not being able to choose what we were eating. Cooking for my family had always been one of my favorite ways of caring for them, and it wore me down every day to not even have that. I was losing my life piece by piece. For sleep, we'd get cheap hotel rooms whenever we could, but mostly we'd park and sleep at rest stops or in open 24-hour store parking lots, keeping the car on for warmth in the below zero temperatures, internally begging the cops not to come and take my son. I don't know what I would have done if I had to be afraid that my partner and I would be thrown in jail, too, while my son was put in the system, which is a terrifying reality that many families will have to face with some of the recent Supreme Court decisions around homelessness. Being unsheltered with my son in the middle of winter was bad enough, without adding the fear of jail time for not having a place to live to my worries too. Occupying my son's time was difficult. The park or anything outside was out of the question in those temperatures, so we spent our days in the library, or on the computers, or reading, trying to escape our harsh reality and give our son a semblance of normalcy. The library became our sanctuary, a place where we can pretend, even for just a few hours, that we were just like everyone else. But the worst was the cold. It seeps into your bones, into your spirit. Trying to sleep in a car with frozen fingers and toes, struggling to open packages of food when your hands are numb to give your heavily bundled child in the back seat. It's a kind of exhaustion that goes beyond physical. It's a deep, gnawing hopelessness. Every night was a battle between staying warm enough to survive, not running out of gas, and the fear that someone might notice us and take what little we had left away. Every breath felt like a fight to hold ourselves together in a frozen world. One of the hardest moments was when we finally connected with the YWCA for help, but had to establish evidence of our homelessness to get it. We had been trying to dig ourselves out of this hole for ourselves, by ourselves, for too long, and could no longer prove our homelessness. What were we going to do? A local church that hosts loaves and fishes started recognizing us and getting curious. Its members began asking us gentle questions. We explained the situation to them, and the pastor offered to let us sleep in our car in the parking lot overnight so that he could vouch for our homelessness in the morning. We were in a shelter very quickly after that, and on our way to our new home, even if I didn't realize it at the time. I had known about 211 from a previous encounter with a United Way packet many years before. I had been living in a domestic abuse shelter when I was 19 and received it from my advocate. I remember sitting in my friend's car with that pamphlet in my hands, staring down at it, full of rage and devastation. I was raised in an environment during a time when it was common to believe that all nonprofits are scams, and that fear, pain, and distrust held me back, so I didn't call that day. I wish I had. It wasn't until the YWCA recommended calling them again that I took the leap. Making that call felt like setting myself up to get my hopes up again, just to have them crushed again. But it ended up being the first step towards reclaiming our lives. The experience was transformative. United Way's Project Home and the YWCA stepped in, got us into a shelter, and eventually into our very own apartment again that we're still living in today. They helped with everything, from the damage deposit to first month's rent to connecting with Bridging the Gap for furniture. They provided care baskets of cleaning supplies, towels, utensils, and more. But most importantly, they treated us with dignity and respect, unlike so many others who had looked down on us during that time. I was surprised when I started my position here to discover that many of the nonprofits I mentioned today are partners of United Way, or were at that time, including the YWCA and Loaves and Fishes. United Way was a part of my life before I had even called 211, and that's wonderful to me. It made me realize just how interconnected we all are and how vital these support systems are in holding us together. Securing housing felt like winning the lottery. I cried for weeks, one second overwhelmed with relief, the next frozen with the crippling fear that it might all be taken away again at any moment. My son flourished, having his own room back again, and a mother who wasn't constantly terrified every second of every day anymore. We started rebuilding our lives. But just as things were looking up, my sister died by suicide. Having a home during that time was crucial. Many things took my sister from us too young, but I believe one of the major factors in her death was her fear of the relentless struggle to try to make ends meet as a single unmarried woman in America. And if I had been homeless during that time, I don't see how I would have made it through it. I've barely made it this far as it is. A couple of short months later, my fiancé lost his grandma. A few months after that, his mother passed away. And just a small number of months after that, his grandpa died too. I won't speak much on these losses, but we had a very hard 2 years leading up to COVID, and we all know how that was. Having our own beds to sleep in, and a safe place to grieve and cry when we lost my sister and so many members of my partner's family, all within the span of a year was, and still is, everything. I don't know how I would have survived without a place to call home. Trauma is lifelong, and grief is all-consuming. Having a stable place to live during that time made coping with our losses possible, and continues to do that for us today. It's a reminder that home is more than just shelter. It's a foundation for healing and hope. Organizations like Greater Twin Cities United Way are a lifeline for people in crisis, in more ways than I understood 6 years ago, when my journey with them began. These people work tirelessly to try to prevent physical and emotional ruin or even suicide from happening to individuals and families here in Minnesota. They connect people with shelter, food, and dignity with dignity. Without the support of donors like you, I believe I would be a statistic, and I wouldn't be able to be here sharing my story today. My family would be mourning me too, or may not have survived themselves. It's easy to think people are responsible for their own suffering, but trauma clouds judgment and paralyzes action in ways we can't understand unless we've lived it ourselves or opened ourselves up to hear it from someone else's unique perspective. We need help and support to navigate these times. United Way provides that, and your contributions make it possible. Please help us continue to do this vital work. Your time, attention, and generosity can save lives and restore hope. Together, we can ensure that no one faces these challenges alone. Thank you.